Alabama ventures into Madtown only the third time the Crimson Tide and the Badgers have played Kalen DeBoer's first road game as the head coach of the Crimson Tide. And Alabama hasn't been to Madison since 1928, but one member of the Tide staff has lived through jump around. Wide receivers coach Jamarcus Shepard lost there twice as a Purdue assistant, and he warned his team this week that they're going to go in and face a bunch of grizzly bears, guys with grown man beards coming out from the chin strap, and they have to be ready to embrace the fight. So he showed them some clips from the movie Troy and said, like Achilles, you have to invite the fight and take it. Well, the first thing for Alabama is making sure that they stop fighting themselves and making mistakes, their Achilles heel.
It was very ugly for Alabama, but they find a way to get it done.
It's frustrating to not perform at your best ability. It was just us not playing to the Bama standard.
The number one thing we have to do is acknowledge where we need to grow at, and then reflect and build off of that.
A Big Ten SEC showdown, Alabama Crimson Tide traveling to Wisconsin.
Well, obviously, it's a great opportunity for us to, show on a national stage who we are. We can't get out of the framework of your preparation just because it's a bigger game.
The guys came in excited, ready to go with the challenge that lies ahead with Wisconsin.
They pride themselves on being tough guys. They play hard, physical.
Right now we're 2-0. The morale in the locker room is very good. Everybody's confident in each other and what we're doing.
We really, really get to see where we are and who we are. If you want to be the best, you've got to play the best. And this just gives you that opportunity.
Game will kick off a little bit after noon as we take a look at today's Goodyear road test, and it certainly will be one for the Crimson Tide against unranked non-conference opponents. They've been really good. Probably worth noting here that both teams will be missing a linebacker in the first half. Jake Chaney from Wisconsin, Justin Jefferson from Alabama, both ejected in the second half of last week's game for targeting, so they'll be in the second half. A rare matchup between these two shades of red, LC.
It definitely is. This Alabama's game, first time in 96 years. And Madison, listen to this. Wisconsin won that game 15-0. Just don't mention it.
Oh.
Yeah, Wisconsin is a type team that gives Alabama trouble. They can run the ball. They control the clock. They can kick it. And if you're a great field goal kicker, they play solid defense. I'm telling you right now, this game is going to be much closer than the experts think. No question about it.
If Wisconsin does that, they're going to have to contain the big playability of Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, Ryan Williams, who we talked about earlier, of course, Jalen Milroe. The Alabama fans got to be a little bit concerned about the injuries that Reese touched on earlier up front. They were very sloppy last week. 13 penalties on offense, 3 fumbles that they lost. They've had 6 fumbles in their first 2 games. So if that happens, that trend has to continue to keep them in this football game, because contain the big playability and win the turnover margin. And the Badgers always have a shot if they can do that at home.
I think a trend of a Luke Fickell team is normally going to be very sound on defense. Well, you're going to have to be, because this Alabama team is very capable of explosive plays. Hey, Coach Saban, let's go to the tape. Okay, I got some tape on this Alabama team, and I'll tell you, Jalen Milroe's quarterback is always going to be awesome. Now, this is an incredible blocking scheme. Obviously, they go down, and then the center and guard come around, and Jam goes to the crib. Now, he's going to make 2 people miss, but utilizing the leverage from the tackle, able to get down the sideline. And you thought he was done breaking tackles? This guy's special. He's able to throw people through the dirt. He's got the power and the speed. Ryan Williams, this is a 17-year-old. Now, listen, they run a little slide protection here. Jalen has nothing but time. And Ryan Williams, a 17-year-old, able to find a spot in the middle of the field, go up and get it at the high point, break a couple tackles. Once again, 17 years old, dancing in the end zone. And then Jalen Milroe. We learned about him last year. Let a naysayer know is how Reese Davis delivered it all. There's a bunch of those still for Jalen Milroe, because Coach Saban isn't there. He's a dog. He's a beast. He's a freight train, and he's obviously able to throw the ball incredibly well. He's a leader of that team. You know that better than anybody. Yeah. And on the field, they've gotten better. They're able to hit the home runs. They're able to do things close. They got to continue to build the intermediate game, I think is what Coach Saban said the entire time.
No, he's right about that. You know that Alabama's going to want to hit the home run ball. When you look at a Luke Fickell defense, they're going to be fundamentally sound, very disciplined. They're going to keep everything in front of them. Their goal is to make you earn every yard that you get. They're going to test the patience of Jalen Milroe and see if they can sustain 12, 14-yard drives. If they can slow the game down like that and then be able to experience some sort of success, And in the third quarter, they start doing that jump around. Things can get crazy at Camp Randall, man. I'm telling you.
I've never got to play
I've been there before, so this is a tough place to play when the fans get into it. But, to me, the biggest issue with Alabama so far has been their big little. And I always hated when our offense played big little. You make a lot of big plays, but then you have a lot of negative plays and inefficiency on offense, whether it's sacks, fumbles, penalties, all the things that put you behind the down and distance so you can't sustain long drives and keep the ball and control the tempo of the game. Right. So I think with the offensive line getting fixed today, I think both tackles will play today, which they didn't play last week. Okay. I think that will help a lot because most of the teams that struggle, they're struggling up front. And hopefully Alabama can get that fixed today.
Yeah, and Pete Thamel did confirm that Caden Proctor, the left tackle for the Crimson Tide, should see his first action of the season.
Yeah, I think that's important, Coach. When you go on the road, you want a good offensive line, and they're going to have that for the first time that they thought they were going to have in week 1. But the defense of Alabama, there's a lot of youth in that secondary. Can Van Dyke make some plays with his arm to offset that Alabama offense? That's where I think it's a chess match. Both coaches, I think, are going to learn a ton about their team today.
And last week, they couldn't get the ball downfield. He's 2 of 9 on balls thrown 15 yards or further against Alabama, man. That is going to be very, very hard. That's where you go back to, can they win the turnover margin? Can they get that short field? Get the crowd, kind of like what South Carolina is going to have to try to do against LSU. Very similar.
Yeah, and on that subject there, I know the level of competition stepped up. Alabama's defense has allowed one play this year of longer than 20 yards. The Crimson Tide, as you mentioned, sort of lived on the other side of the ball with those big plays. This is a great opportunity for Wisconsin for sure to be able to knock off a top 5 team with Alabama coming in. We are headed inside Williams-Brice Stadium in a matter of moments. This has been a great crowd out here this morning. Oregon and Oregon State with its 128th meeting all time. Second most played rivalry in FBS history. Washington State and Washington certainly have great history as well. Now, let's talk about Oregon and Oregon State first. And the Ducks have been rough on both lines of scrimmage, Nick. They've already given up more sacks than they did last year. And Boise State's Ashton Genty ran wild on them.
Well, Oregon obviously needs to button up their play. A lot of people ask the question, can Dylan Gabriel play to the level necessary? I think the bigger question is can the people around him play to the level necessary so that they have more consistency in their play? They've made enough good plays, but they have so many negative plays, penalties, loss of yardage plays, sacks. I mean, they've got to eliminate that. And the other thing they've struggled with is they really struggled to stop the run last week against Boise State. So you let the other team keep the ball all the time. So both those things they need to clean up this week against Oregon State.
Yeah, and to your point there at the end, Oregon State has a guy named Jam Griffin who's averaging 125 yards a game. They're not scared to move the ball on the ground. Now, new transfer quarterback Giovanni McCoy, he can spin it as well. New head coach Trent Bray, who loves the Oregon State Beavers, obviously in there trying to keep the culture that Jonathan Smith tried to bring into Oregon State. So anytime they're playing, it used to be called the Civil War, it's going to be a battle. And to your point, we got to keep these games in the slate every single college football year.
Both of these two teams that got left behind, Oregon State and Washington State, are going to have the massive proverbial chips on their shoulder today. They're going to want to prove a point. Even last year, Washington played the national championship game. They had to convert on 4th and 1 from their own territory to win the game by 3 points. This will be a hotly contested game with Wazoo trying to make a statement.
It really would. I like Wazoo. What I like about them is their quarterback, John Mateer. He ran for 197 yards against Texas Tech. That's a school record for rushing yards by a quarterback. They're going to come out here to make a statement against Washington. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, hard-fought game today, Kirk.
Think about that. They go from Cam Ward and that style of offense to Mateer, now more of a dual threat, and it's been very, very effective. At Washington, we haven't talked a lot about them. These guys played in the national championship last year. Kalen DeBoer goes to replace coach at Alabama. Jed Fish steps in. 59 new players when you add all the players. They only have 2 guys that were in that national championship game that are playing, and yet they have a veteran quarterback at Mississippi State and Will Rogers, 40 career starts. You know all about Will Rogers. I think he can give them some confidence to be able to win a game like this, a rivalry game. But I'm with you, man. There's something about this material, running, throwing, making plays, rivalry game. I like the Cougars now.
197 yards.
197.
Yeah. They really didn't like the fact that people said they made a statement against Texas Tech. Jake Dickert said of Washington State, we're a good team. We beat another high-level team. Steve, they'd like to do it today as well. You're a refugee from the Conference of Champions. What kind of vibe are we going to have in that game?
I think Washington State comes in super confident. They know what they have. They got to play a Power 5 or Power 4 team now in Texas Tech. So I think Washington State's a scary team. Washington, Kirk, you pointed out. When we were at Michigan last week, we saw how much they had to replace. Yeah. And now you look at Washington, they've gotten some wins in doing so. But I think it's a confident Washington State team coming in. I like them also to win the game.
That's scary. All three of us.
Yeah.
The old fellas in purple. Most of them weren't there last year. Their headgears and their jerseys were there last year. Yeah. Different people for Jed Fish's team. Coming up in about an hour or so, 12:45 on the SEC Network. Boston College and Missouri. Now, this is ranked versus ranked matchup. In the preseason, we said, oh, look at Missouri's easy SEC schedule. They don't play anybody in the non-conference. They're going to cruise. Now they got to deal with Castellano. No shirt. You can't tackle him when you get to him in the rush. And then Brady Cook will be spinning the beam for Mizzou.
Yeah, Brady Cook, man, he has probably the best receiving core, at least one of the best receiving cores in all of college football. Luther Burden is wide receiver #1 at this point. He's a hell of a competitor. Eli was telling us earlier today about how he prepares and how he makes everyone around him better. When you have your best player on the team, and this guy is the hardest worker, and that's infectious. Everyone feels it, and everyone thrives off of that. So let's talk about Luther Burden. I'm going to show you what he's going to bring to this game today. Okay. I'm talking to his OC, Kirby Moore. He said, Desmond, he's very physical. Now, right here, normally a wide receiver would turn this into a race to the pylon. But not Lou. Lou said, listen, I'm going to plant this left foot, drop this right shoulder, and take you into the end zone with me. I admire his physicality. And then the willingness to block. He's right there in the slot to your left. He's going to run an over route. Now, the ball's going to go to Theo. And watch where he is and how long he has to take this block. He holds the block for 4 seconds. Coach Kirby said, if you don't have the ball in your hands, I want you to go out there and find work. And he found some work. But this is what he does best. It's going to turn to double coverage, just a post route. Coach Saban, I want you to rate this catch. Okay, I'm going to rewind it. I want you to check this catch out. He got 2 guys draped on him. From 1 to 10, watch him catch the ball. And you got arms, limbs everywhere. What do you rate that catch, Coach?
Yeah, well, those kind of catches, being a secondary guy, is what makes me shake my leg off.
There are a lot of things that do that. There are a lot of things that do that.
That's it.
Luther Burden is a weapon.
I think Bill O'Brien has done, to this point in the season, as good a job as a head coach as anybody in the country. Because nobody really thought BC was going to be 2-0 going into this game. And they have a legitimate shot. And I think he's done best is taken Thomas Castellanos and done what he can do offensively and made him a very effective player. And they have been tough to stop offensively so far this season.
And what's unique in a situation like this, they don't have the athletes to match up with Missouri. But to your point, I think, number one, they're starting to believe in a new philosophy in Bill O'Brien. And what he does a great job of is he's got a quarterback that can run the football, and he makes the defense account for that, uses a lot of different personnel groupings, formations, just confuses the defense, slows them down, and allows that big guy to make a lot of plays.
Mizzou favored by a couple of touchdowns. Burden only has 9 touches all year.
Out here for LSU, Chris Hillen Jr. is not dressed. He will not go for the 3rd consecutive week for LSU. For Bama, some good news against Wisconsin at noon here. Caden Proctor, their star left tackle, will be back. Remember, he got injured in warm-ups before the Western Kentucky game. And then for Colorado, bad news. Torrey Horton, he caught 16 balls against them last year in that overtime thriller. He was questionable this week. I've been told he's going to be a game-time decision, but look for him to play tonight.